What's going on, everybody? Another lesson of economics in the A levels. Now, AS economics is very similar, I mentioned earlier, to O level economics, but not to be taken lightly. For those of you who are new here in economics, so the chapter 2 is going to be talking about economic systems. Now, in every economy, in every country, basically, you have certain few questions to answer. What to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce for. In the previous lesson, we were talking about the basic economic problem where factors of production were allocated efficiently and what those factors of production were: land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Now, economic systems and governments need to basically figure out what are they going to produce. Should they be producing more goods which are oriented towards basically improving people's short-term value, or should they be producing goods which are promoted towards improving people's long-term standard of living or value and for what they appreciate? Those are basically consumer versus capital goods. How to produce? Should there be a higher level of capital in the market, or should there be more labor-intensive industries present? Or should we be basically importing all of our goods and services? And for whom to produce, that is, that we don't basically, governments want to make sure, or economies want to make sure that there's an income equality, that distribution of income is equal throughout the rich and the poor, and that people are not left worse off or better off after whatever they make and do. Now, basically, these questions are answered by three different forms of economic systems, and they all lie on a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you have a market economy, and on the other end of the spectrum, you have a planned economy. And in the middle, you have the mixed economy. Now, first, let's talk about the market economy. The market economy, or the free market, basically allocates resources via the price mechanism, that is through demand and supply. Basically, the demand supply or the price mechanism suggests that there are producers and their consumers who, by bargaining amongst one another and by buying, selling, will determine the price of something, and therefore will determine what they want at the end of the day. Another great factor about the market economy is that it's very responsive. So let's say that a certain product doesn't work. Let's say that this marker, red markers, people don't like red markers. They'll shun markers across the market, and there won't be any. So that means that they'll be catering to what the people want. So there's more choice involved as well, and they actually listen to the consumer as a whole. And as I mentioned, there's more choice. So there might not just be a red marker, there'll be blue, magenta, yellow, pink, red, not red, black, gold, silver, any other color marker but red, because they're also responsive. But the downside is that the market might fail. Demerit goods which are bad for you, might actually start flooding the market, might be flooding the economy. Like, let's say there might be a rise in cigarettes or alcohol, even though the price mechanism is suggesting that these two things that we want them, but they're not good for you, right? They actually have a negative effect on people. That is a negative externality, a negative spillover effect. And that negative spillover effect can also be from the producer's end, where they're actually dumping chemicals into the sea, they're polluting, and so on and so forth. Also, what might happen is that there might be monopolization. Competition might not survive. Small business owners might not survive because the big man up there is actually, beating the competition down and taking up all the market. How? By reducing its costs even further, and by being able to charge a price which the consumers want to pay. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you have the planned economy. The planned economy is basically, or the command economy, is run by the government completely. The government determines what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom to produce whatever they are producing. So all resources are allocated by the government. They make sure that there's an equality in income and wealth across the economy. There's no one who's super rich, there's no one who's super poor, no one is below the poverty line. Everyone is employed or is getting unemployment benefits. Everyone is in a job. But what sucks is that the government or the planned economy will also have a lack of choice, because they are determining what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. Let's talk about bread. If the government says, or the planned economy says, there will only be white bread, you won't get brown bread. Sucks if you have some gluten allergy, or if if you need high fiber, you can't get it because the government is only allocating resources for white bread. There's no profit motive. Now, business owners won't be able to survive. And what happens is that because the government is actually providing everything and is making everything, you won't be able to make a profit at the end of the day, and therefore you won't be motivated to work in the first place. I might have to be slaving around in a factory because the government is telling me to work there, even though I might be entrepreneurial and I could grow as a business owner, so on. Now, also what might happen is that there'll be higher level of taxes. That means that the government is actually going to give you a salary, but it's going to give you a salary so much as such that you can make ends meet, and therefore the rest of the income that you get might be taxed, right? So there's not much of a savings happening, and also, well, taxes aren't the best of things, right? Only if they're used well. Let's not get into that argument. That's a talk for another later time. But what happens when you can't find a market economy in the real world, and you can't find a pure planned economy in the real world. So what do you mostly find? You mostly find something called a mixed economy, which, as Miley Cyrus and Hannah Montana once said, is the best of both worlds. So what they do is, what a mixed economy does is that they get the best of the market economy and the best of the planned economy and brings it together. How does that work? Some industries will be left to the government to take care of, like water, like natural, like major necessities that are to be supplied, like again water, electricity, healthcare. These will be provided by the government free of cost or at a very low cost. But then there'll be industries which are left to the private sector, which means that, let's say, food and bev will be left to the private sector. Retail, the service industry might be left to the private sector. At the same time, there's also going to be a healthy amount of taxes, and there'll be tax benefits involved as well. Governments might want to actually promote certain businesses. So, like, let's say in Pakistan, the government promotes the car industry in Pakistan, so they actually provide them with subsidies. That means that they're giving them money to reduce their cost of production. But at the same time, people who pay their taxes regularly, the government might say, you know what, this year I'll deduct your tax off that way. So they actually try to incorporate systems where both are working in sync. The price mechanism will exist, there will be choices, there will also be taxes, there will also be regulations on the negative externalities. So the government is there to make sure that the market doesn't fail in any way. There's no overflooding of demerit goods. There's actually governments are making sure that public goods are provided, free goods are provided, like, let's say, street lights or defense or security. And at the same time, they will also make sure that the air is not being polluted. While the private individual will make sure that if a kid wants Kokomo, he gets his Kokomo. If a kid wants Milo, he gets his Milo. And if an adult wants Chili Milli, they will get their Chili Milli. They make sure that choices are met and that people can basically innovate, create, and then also at the same time continue to make a profit. Now, this was a relatively shorter lesson because you need to make sure that the concepts are clear. You need to understand there's a divide in two forms of economies, and the mixed economy is actually merging the two. So I can't really give you a clear-cut disadvantage versus advantage, and of course, we're limited on time, so I can't break down all the advantages and disadvantages. Hope you like that. Next week, I promise you, every week there will be an AS level lesson this time. I won't be sporadic with it. See you guys then. Peace out. And if you have questions, ask below.